Tansa Wild Killer here, and this is another chapter of Blank Space. This is day 15, and the chapter is called Together. So, let's continue. Lawrence and Garth stayed like that for what felt like forever, gently embracing for as long as they could. Lawrence still shook intensely the entire time. The brunette began to feel very lightheaded. He stumbled a bit, and Garth let him out of his arms and grabbed him by the shoulder to stabilize him. "Are you okay?" he asked quickly, worry flashing in his dark blue eyes. Lawrence put his hand up to his head. He had read about this in his lessons. "Kind of," he said crisply. "Overstimulation is happening to me. You appearing and smashing the glass is something my body hasn't prepared for. I have had nothing like this happen to me before." His mind flashed back to his mother, his old home. He wasn't sure why. At least that I know of. "So why did you fall back like that? It looked like as if you were about to faint." Lawrence looked at his hands. "My body doesn't know how to react, so it's trying to figure out what to do." He stumbled back again, blackness blurring the edge of his vision. Garth grabbed his arm, keeping him from tumbling to the floor. He looked really concerned now. "I need to lie down," Lawrence said faintly, feeling a bit weak now. He felt overwhelmed than he had ever had in his life. Garth wrapped his arms around his shoulders, helping him walk to the bed. Lawrence had only taken a few steps before he felt his legs collapse. His vision went dark, and he heard a sudden gasp as he landed in Garth's arms. All was black. Lawrence couldn't hear, do, or say anything. He tried to piece together what happened. His memory was a bit fuzzy. He felt more conscious than he remembered how Garth had busted through the mirror and how they had hugged for such a long time. Soon enough, his eyes flickered open. He realized that he was in a bed, but it was different from his own. He turned his head, looking around the room. Sure enough, there was a big hole in the wall from where Garth had punched his way through. But other things were different. Papers were scattered all over the floor, covered in vibrant colors and paintings. On the wall across from him, Lawrence saw a painting of a boy. He had brown hair, freckles that were scattered across his tan skin like stars, and icy pale blue eyes. He rushed to his cheeks, and he pulled back the covers and sat up. He looked over to see that Garth was not sitting far away. The blond boy's head was resting on his hand, his eyes were closed, and his breathing was soft. Lawrence swung his legs over the side of the bed and sat there a while. He looked all over the room. Why had Garth taken him into his room? His head whipped over to Garth as he saw his friend stir and open his eyes. He gave a yawn after a moment and smiled at Lawrence. "Hey, Lawrence," he said sleepily. "You really scared me, you know. Let's try not to faint into my arms like that again." Lawrence looked away as if failing effort to hide his growing blush. He quickly changed the subject by pointing to the painting of the boy. "Is that the painting of me?" he asked quietly. Lawrence was impressed. It looked beautiful and looked a lot like him. "Oh," Garth replied. "Yeah, it is." He looked down, but not before Lawrence caught a blush growing on his cheeks. "I know it looks awful, nothing like the real you." Lawrence got up and walked over to the portrait. "What are you talking about?" he whispered. It's like looking in a mirror." He smiled, putting his hand on the wall. He then turned around and examined the room once more. Everything was so familiar, yet so different at the same time. "So, why did you carry me in here?" Lawrence asked, looking at the hole in the wall that led to his room. Garth looked a little embarrassed. Your bed is full of glass. I tried to wipe it off, but..." He shifted his arm, shielding the cuts and glass shards that were in his arm from view. "So I carried you into my room." Lawrence rushed over to Garth. "You're bleeding!" he said quickly, realizing the seriousness of Garth's wounds. The white shirt and pants he was wearing was covered in bloodstains, and his arms were cut from little shards. His fist that he used to break the mirror was worst of all, having large glass shards sticking out of it and blood staining his skin. He looked up at Garth's eyes. The boy almost looked unfazed. I just haven't felt it. With everything that has happened, it just doesn't feel important. Lawrence shook his head. That's all the adrenaline that is running through you right now. You'll feel it soon. He ripped the sheets of Garth's bed and tore it with his teeth, making long strips. He used his fingers to take out as many shards of glass as he could, and Garth winced once in a while, but never complained or pulled away. He then wrapped Garth's arms, pulling away after he finished his work. It's not the best, but it will stop the bleeding. Thank you, Garth whispered, looking at his wrapped-up arms before returning. Lawrence's gazed with tears in his eyes. I'm just so glad you're here. I could finally see you. Lawrence smiled back. And I'm not going anywhere until we get out of here together. And that is where we end the chapter. Like if you liked, comment what you think's gonna happen next. If you want. Subscribe if you want. And everything is in the description below. So, I'll see you guys next time. See ya.